everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. In today's Mind Story, we have Kyle Marcotte come in and talk about how he has become a successful businessman at age of 21. So a very impressive Kyle. I remember when I was 21, I think I was still in college. Um, so Kyle has a successful apartment syndication business, and he's also coaching people like himself, youngsters like himself, how to kind of take the leap in life and become financially free very quickly. So we actually have a pretty similar mission over here as well. So Kyle, very welcome to come to our show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited.
Awesome. So Kyle, when you shared your story with me, I was fascinated on how someone who's a young 21-year-old like yourself get to where you are right now. So I was like, I must have this person come in and be on our show. Walk us back a little bit. If you're thinking back in your childhood, what are some experiences you feel like, helped you prepare for this mindset and this journey?
Yeah, I think the first story that would really sum up my mindset in general would just be a story about my dad. So in 2008, my father lost his job in Austin, and what he was forced to do was get the only job that was hiring, which was a job in Houston, Texas, cleaning pools. And so literally going out there with the net cleaning pools. And for anyone who doesn't know Texas geography, that's about a 4 hour drive each way. So the guy is driving his truck 4 hours each way and cleaning pools in the Houston sun. And again, if you're not familiar with Houston or Texas
Yeah,
geography, it's not cold in Houston. I'll just put it
yeah,
like that,
yeah.
right? So, I mean, it's a grind. And the guy is, we obviously can't afford to have like a second apartment out there. And he doesn't want to move the family to Houston. He wants to leave us in Austin because me and my brother are in school and we're younger.
Mm,
And so what he did was slept in his truck during the week, drove to
wow.
Houston, slept in his truck during the week, cleaned pools in 100+ degree weather, humidity like you wouldn't believe, and then came home on the weekends. And so I really only saw my dad on the weekends for a lot of my childhood. And I knew that the reason for that was because he was working very hard to provide for the family.
Mhm.
So it taught me two really valuable lessons. Number one, being, hard work is awesome and you can make yourself do a lot of cool stuff if you really put your mind to it. And then the second thing, and it's a little more of a subtle lesson, but that's that hard work does not equal success. And
Mhm.
that's another really key point. It's not just about the hard work. It's a key component, absolutely, 100%. But it's level one. It's not, the level that you want to get to. There's several levels to success, and
Mhm.
understanding scale and understanding, independent time, making money independent of your time. Just a grind. And I guess that was a really formative period for me, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's very hard. I mean, that your dad is even doing these sacrifices. So how old were you then?
Let's do the math. 2008-ish. Man, I think I was in like third or fourth grade. I could be wrong, but yeah, it was sometime in there. So it's 2020 and I'm 21. So
Hmm.
2008 is minus 12 years. So yeah, somewhere around 12 or 13.
Geez, that's like
That,
so long ago, right?
yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So then there's a desire. Then what did you do about it, like after?
Well, I guess number one, I poured myself into soccer, and this might be another thing from my childhood. So I'm dyslexic, and that's kind of a really interesting thing to grow up with
Hmm.
in the school system that we currently have in place. It
Hmm.
does not reward for dyslexic students at all in any way,
Hmm.
shape, or form, and they tend to just say that you're dumb because you're not getting good grades, right? Oh, he's just an idiot. Or even worse, he's not trying hard enough. He's not applying himself. He's a smart
Yeah.
kid, but he's just not applying himself. I got that so much in school, and it
Hmm.
frustrated me to no end because I was like, no, I am trying hard. I just can't. Like it's just a completely different brain.
Right, right.
Dyslexic people see things in a completely different way. It's not better or worse. It's different, and so the school system does not say, optimize for that. So I
And can
was
you
kind of
tell us a little bit about dyslexic, like, like how you're different? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So there's a book called The Dyslexic Advantage, which is a great book to read. It talks all about how, to put it really simply, dyslexic people see the connections between events and they have really good broad brushstrokes. So we understand how to categorize things, we understand connections between things, but details and focusing in on something is very, very difficult for us. And that
Mhm.
is, what school optimizes for is details, tasks, and following through. And that's not a dyslexic thing. So if you want to take it all the way back to our, conception, it would be we're in tribes, right? And you need some people who can lock in and hunt the animal, right? And get the
Mm-hmm.
food for the tribe or
Mm-hmm.
find the berries that they need to find, lock in and know what berries to get. But you
Right.
also need a member of the tribe who is going to, understand where our campsite was last night or where our tribe is like located, what direction that we've
Mm-hmm.
hiked so far to get out to
Yeah.
this. So we need someone who can be like, where did we? Because visualization and 3D, like the dyslexic thing is all about 3D awareness, right? So everything in my mind is in like this 3D thing. I visualize really well, but the thing is, when I try to look at 2D stuff on paper, it starts to flip all around, and that's the issue with reading, that's the issue with writing,
Mm,
and that's the issue with
okay.
school. So it's really good for visualizing,
Fascinating.
really good for directions, really good for oversight and vision and maybe systems as well, because I can visualize the whole process. But
Yeah.
the locking in on like a spreadsheet or locking in on schoolwork is never been something I've been good at.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. That's so did you know that Barbara Cochran also, I think, is also dyslexic? So that
Wow.
speaks volumes on people who are very successful. So yeah, definitely. So how did you kind of then walk me through the path where you kind of going to you basically had the why, and then now like how did you actually got to the next level? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it happened in stages. My first stage was like, okay, I don't want to be a manual labor person. I want to be more in the white collar. I think that's the solution, right? So my thought was,
Hmm.
oh, I'll work really hard. I'll still do the same thing, but I'll get my medical degree. I'll be a doctor. So I went to school trying to get my medical degree. I studied neurobiology at UC Davis, and I played Division I soccer there. So I had poured myself into soccer in order to get into the school because, like I said, struggled in
Mm-hmm.
school. So I was like, I'm going to focus on soccer, poured myself into that, got my scholarship, kind of was doing everything that people said I was supposed to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't happy. And I realized, man, it's not the doctor thing's not going to change it. It's something about this whole time thing because I had no freedom. And that was what was stressing me out. I had practice all day, coach, requirements, and then I had school in a pre med degree, very, very difficult schooling, especially in the UC system. So it's like, how do we figure out how to get our time back? And then from there, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which showed me about that separation and how assets can contribute via cash flow to
Mm-hmm.
passive income. And so from there, I decided that's what I'm doing, and
Mm-hmm.
dropped out of school and pursued that full time because I saw it as the way to get my freedom, and that's kind of been what I've done since.
And so how did you stumble upon Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Honestly, it was just a lucky situation, one of those serendipitous things. I think I might have looked up like top 10 books to get rich, some stupid like Google
Mm-hmm.
search that someone,
Yeah.
when you're first starting, you just search stuff. And of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad comes up number one. And I ordered it on Amazon. It gets there the next day, read the thing in one day because it just
Yeah.
blows my mind. Because your whole world is shifted after that book. Where my thought was, I'm just gonna grind it out because I know I can work hard, and I'm gonna be
Mm-hmm.
65, and I'll be a doctor. I'll make some money, and then I'll be retired at 65. But then you start to realize, well, what happens if I die at 51? Or what happens if,
Right.
I can never see my kids ever because on call all the time, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
And then you're repeating basically what your dad is doing to the kids. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like there's a lot of hard work because when you're going doing the soccer and medical school is not easy. Some people are just struggling even through the medical school. So how did you like kind of cope through that kind of really rigorous working regime, like routines? Yeah.
I really don't know. I think I'm really good at making scaffolding around myself in the form of systems so that I can't fail. Because I've found that if you try to trust yourself on the moment to moment basis, like for example, if you want to go on a diet, you want to lose weight, you want to be in good shape. If you just say like, yeah, I'll leave the same food in my fridge, I'll have the same kind of meal plan, but I will just hope that I make the right decisions every single meal and not eat the sweets. And that's
Hmm.
kind of like your thought, like, oh, I'll wing it and it'll happen. No,
Yeah.
for me, like, I'm going to improve the entire environment. I'm going to remove everything from the house that is tempting in any shape or form. And I'm going to allocate a certain list of things that I can do and can't do. I'm going to clearly define the no's and clearly define the yeses. And I'm going to create some sort of a scaffolding around myself to where I know when I'm cheating and there's no question about it, so that I
Hmm.
have there's systems in place to correct that. And I did that with soccer. I did that with training. I did that with, I now do that with real estate quite a bit. All of my meetings are scheduled in a certain way. Everything that I do is
Hmm.
systemized so that all I have to do is show up. And there's so many things leaning on me to show up that if I
Yeah.
wasn't to show up, there would be so much pain associated with me not showing up that I just would never, ever not do it.
Right, right. So that's awesome. This is a good segue into like our second segment of this, which is like show us kind of your system, right? Because when I talked with you, I was really impressed because we were just on the podcast that you hosted, and then Kyle actually showed me the system that he has built up. You know, even though he has a real estate school, I was like, dude, you got like to start doing something about these systems. It's amazing. I've actually never have seen anyone's system as kind of elaborate and organized as his. So Kyle, walk us a little bit over about your business currently. And then maybe we can kind of take a little bit moment to see how you actually build up your systems. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So right now, what we're doing is at my company, we're trying to scale the actual engagement and the obscurity thing. We're trying to make sure that people know who we are so that we can serve more people with the course and serve more people with education and kind of building up that also for investors in the future. So there's kind of a double whammy to the approach. But essentially, we have to optimize for content marketing. We need to be able to see our content. The content needs to be good and it needs to go out consistently. So I can do one of two things. I can, number one, just pray that I have motivation every single day to like write an article or to make a podcast, or I can put a system in place to where I'm literally forced to, and there's no option and there's a clear scaffolding all around me to where it's literally streamlined. And that's kind of what I came up with. So the system that I showed you and that you've alluded to is a three-part system, and the three parts are number one, communication, because when you have a team and you have people that are moving parts, you have to have a clear way of communicating concisely, and there needs to be a system to the communication. So we have a thing called Slack, and each channel in Slack, if you've ever used Slack before, you have channels for communication. So you only communicate about certain things in certain channels, and the channels have multiple parts to them. So the channels are very important. You have like general, you have resources, you have things like that. But the most important thing is if I have a PowerPoint that needs to get done or a graphic that needs to get done, I have an edit channel. So they put the edit in there, the rough draft that they provided. And then me and my team will critique it. And then if it passes the test, we'll put the zip file of all the different formats and dimensions. And like if it's a PSD or a JPEG, and then also if it's Instagram size or Facebook size, we'll put that all in a zip file and that'll go in the final. And it's labeled in a certain way that we've established so that it'll show up alphabetically and by episode number or by whatever we're doing for that day or week or month, so that everyone knows where everything is. And that's the communication aspect, which is extremely important. And then number two would be the files, because we all need a place to share files. And also we all need a hub. And that hub happens to be a shared Google Chrome browser. So everyone logs into a free Gmail account called Team Kyle Marcotte. And it's super easy. You can create a free Gmail anytime. And you just have that Gmail logged into the Chrome and you let everyone log into it. So we all have browsers. And then we're all using the same browser. And on that browser, we'll bookmark our names and also different categories like meetings. And we'll have all our meetings under that bookmark. Kyle, and we'll have all my stuff, resources, tools, all the social medias are bookmarked. So you can log into them and not have to use the password. And we also use a thing called LastPass, so that if you sign into LastPass, then all the passwords populate for you if you're signed into the Chrome. So we have no issue with like, what's the verification code? Did they just send you a text? Can you send me the like, you know, all that kind of stuff? You know, all the logistical issues there.
Yeah.
So we completely solved that problem, and everyone can log in at any time fully with no, there's no barriers there, which is awesome. And then from there, you know, we all have the same Google Drive, so everything is labeled. The podcast stuff is. The naming is so much more important than honestly the system. You could scrap the system if you get the naming down. The naming is so very, very important.
Yes.
And that's something that we're perfecting, because if you can get them to be in alphabetical order and by date, so like our meetings are all titled the same way. It's like, you know, it goes month, day, and then name of whatever it is so that it can show up in order for the meetings. And then for podcast, it's guest name, episode, or it's episode number, guest name, and then like main title point or something of that nature, so that we can have them show up by episode name and number in that situation. So it's just thinking about those kind of things so that sorting is really clear. And then from there, everyone can see that, which is nice. But then the last part of the system is tasks, because we have to assign stuff. People have to know what they need to do, and it needs to be clear. So there we have Asana. And in everyone's folder on Google Chrome, they have their Asana login under their name on their folder. So they all go into Asana from there. And their tasks are assigned to them by the higher up, which is me and my partner Adam, or my, I guess kind of, I'll call my partner Adam. And he runs a lot of the back end stuff. So he'll assign tasks, and the VA or the virtual assistant will assign their due date. Because if they assign their due date, there's much more accountability there. Yeah. And that's what we do. So the detail of the Asana task is, number one, it's titled. So we'd say webinar, June 23rd webinar slides. And then they would have that assigned to them, and they'd see that. And then if they click details, they'll see the actual file that I want them to edit. So they literally can't mess that up. Then I'll have what the webinar is going to be about. And then I'll have some subtasks that are literally very specific as well. And that's basically the system.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow, that's like a very detailed explanation. Thank you so much for getting into all that detail. Um, and I'm just gonna kind of think about like, how did you actually start the system? Because the system isn't built in a day. Don't tell me like it's built in a day, right? Like, how did you even kind of get that started? Like, what does that day one look like?
That's a great question. I think that I was thinking about the Chrome aspect really early, and that's kind of the base for everything, which was I have bookmarks on my browser that are very important and help me expedite the process that I do when I was doing it myself. And I was
Yeah.
like, how do I share this so that everyone can see my bookmarks and the way that I make bookmarks? Because that seems to be working for me. So then I was like, oh, I just make another Gmail account that's free that doesn't have any personal stuff on it so I can share it with anyone. And then I did that. And that was kind of step one. And
Mhm.
then it naturally just happens over time where you realize, okay, well, I can't talk to these people in any way, shape, or form. We can do these weird comments on Google Documents, but those are kind of weird. And when you resolve them, they go away forever. And that's kind of like, I don't really know how to systemize that. So then I found out about Slack, and the channels never disappear. So that's
Mhm.
awesome. We actually train our VAs for social media by having one of the channels is called social media, and every single post I've ever done ever is in there. So if we hire a new guy and they need to learn how to comment and talk like me and respond like me, then
Mhm.
they scroll through the channel and they see all of the data that I've ever posted, and they go, "Oh, that's how
Right.
this guy talks." So
Yeah.
that's that would disappear in a Google Chrome comment because you press resolve and then it's gone. So that was second step of communicating.
Yeah.
And third step would be then the tasks. Like I can kind of use Upwork and like message them, but I want it to be all in one spot so that everyone knows
Mhm.
and that there's dates associated with the due dates, and I can see what people are in progress on, and that's what Asana does.
Mhm.
So that was kind of the natural growth of the system.
Gotcha. And how long did it take it for you to build that one system?
Probably, well, overall, I would say it took maybe a month, but the actual work of it
Yeah.
was a couple hours each step, just because I sit down like often at the end of every day and I try to visualize the day and see what I could have done better. I think it's kind of
Hmm.
like a stoic practice.
Yeah.
And I have a journal about what happened, what could have been better, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I'll just visualize kind of what I want to have the system look like. Like, what would be the ideal? I always ask myself these questions because I read this book, Zero to One by Peter Thiel. He talks a
Hmm.
lot about hard questions that stretch your imagination, to stretch your view on the world. And, some of the questions are an example of like, what's your 10-year plan? And then once you figure what that is, why can't that be a 6-month plan? And
Yeah.
that just freaks you out, right? Because you're like, ten
Yeah.
years, how do I make that 6 months? What does that even mean? And your brain kind of collapses in on itself. But if you allow it to try to answer that question somehow, you'll start to see that, wow, your brain starts to come up with some really creative stuff. So I try to do that as much as I can, ask myself questions like, man, if I could just download the thing that I want this VA to do, how would I get that to done? Because if you ever worked with a VA, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it can be frustrating. Like
Yeah.
so frustrating. You're like, I want this to be clear, but I don't know how to say it to you. There's somewhat of a language barrier a little bit,
Right.
and like, it's just so frustrating. So I was like, I'm gonna just, what would it be like if it was perfect? And I would
Right.
just sit there and think about that for hours, and then eventually, it started to kind of unfold, and it's turned into what it has so far.
Got it. Got it. So to kind of do, so you kind of took the grow and systemize as you go. And I think from all our other episode, that seems to be the theme over here. Essentially, so I'm guessing just systemizing that methodology as well. I'm guessing you're pulling out maybe the most painful task and then systemizing it. Is there a prioritization on, okay, what's the next thing? Because you can systemize for ages and nothing, you want to get everything done. That's my struggle, obviously, is that you want to get everything done, but there's a day-to-day task that you need to do. And so how do you actually go about and decide which is the task you're going to systemize?
Yeah, for me, it's what am I absolutely have to do, like that I cannot be replaced, and everything else I'm going to get out of my off my plate. And like you said, it's positioned most painful to least painful. So for
Hmm.
me, the only things I can't replace is like number one, I can't have someone else speaking right now on the podcast. I have to be here, right? This is
Right.
you're interviewing Kyle Marcotte. I can't send a VA to come and interview, right? So
Yeah.
that's like this is something I cannot systemize out of, but I want to systemize everything around this to where
Uh-huh.
the calendar invite that is received for the podcast is set up by a VA, and all the answers to your calendar questions to get the information required for me to be on here, that is also systemized. And then reaching out to people in the future to get on other ones is also systemized. So then all I have to do is look at my Google Calendar for the day, what are my appointments, and then show up to those and try to execute on those. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. So for number one, it's also like, what are the things that could be systemized easiest is another
Mm,
question to ask. Because like,
mm, okay.
podcast editing and making like difficult not difficult, but like graphics for Instagram and making sure that everything's transcribed and that there's data at the top and bottom and those like little titles are actually related to the episode
Right.
and that someone understands how to do that. That's a little bit harder to systemize than like send an email with my one pager to podcast hosts. Here's a list of 100 podcast hosts. Here's my one pager. Click send. Like I want someone
Right.
to do that for me, right? So that's I'll also kind of have that be a multiplier on the difficulty or pain is also the ease of systemizing it.